And we've finally hit 9th episode of Obscure Amiga Games. Let's see what we've got in store for today. The Way of the Little Dragon is a 2D fighting game clearly inspired by both Bruce Lee and his many kung fu movies. Come to think of it, there weren't that many, and I'm not sure kung fu is the term to use here, as the fighting style that he created was Jeet Kune Do, a combination that apparently more or less translates to the way of the catching fist. The similarities to the martial arts genius do not end at your character's sprite, however. The hero that you control is named Lee, and he's tasked with defeating the Tai Sai gang to save his home island. And to do that, he must defeat 8 martial arts masters that are apparently core part of the gang. While the sprites are pretty big and nicely looking, aiming for realism rather than flashy visuals, the gameplay itself, at least for me, leaves a bit to be desired. The opponents seem pretty stiff, and your selection of moves, while decent, is for the lack of a better word boring. The game, as seen on the video in the background, can nearly be completed with pretty much one attack. Sort of a spinning key, if you listen without watching and wonder. The Way of the Little Dragon may be good enough to complete once, just to add it to your mental list of games that you've 100, but no more really. Oh, you don't have one of those mental lists? So it's just me? Oh well, that's a me problem it seems. Anyway, The Way of a Little Dragon can also be played in multiplayer, and while with most titles I'd say it's the preferred way of experiencing the game, I don't think so here. It's same as in single, with a difference that the two people can get bored and grow progressively uninspired by the gameplay loop. Clearly, there's been a reason for the game's obscurity. Sounds and music are quite good though, so at least there's that. Simply put, Traps and Treasures is fantastic. It may not be as big or as full of secrets and hidden passages as Super Frog, or as compulsive and random as Robocode 2, but it doesn't have to be, as it's entirely different kind of a platformer. It's not a game where you travel through huge multiple screen spanning and 4-way scrolling levels, it's more linear and straightforward. You have to save your crewmates and get to the end of each level, simple as that. Now, this may sound simple, boring and perhaps repetitive, but believe me, it's anything but. Traps and Treasures is pretty difficult and requires very quick reactions, but it's also incredibly fun and rewarding. On your way you'll encounter many different pirate and marine themed enemies and obstacles, all beautifully designed and super smoothly animated. And since we're on the presentation, it's great. The game is colorful and has its own very unique graphical style that I'm not sure I've seen in other titles. Pretty cool addition is seemingly active or at least scripted music system that switches tracks in very specific situations, for instance when going underwater. The swashbuckling piratey atmosphere is spilling through the screen when playing Traps and Treasures, and for the life of me I cannot fathom a guess why it didn't get more wider recognition and popularity. But I suppose it wasn't in the cards for it. Despite that, it's definitely one of the best platformers on the Amiga and a game I enjoy coming back to, even if only to fail a couple of levels in. Breaking news. Scientists have discovered that the human genome has been getting weaker and weaker with each generation. Our days seem to be numbered, and if nothing is changed, we will eventually all perish. To combat this situation, a plan has been formed. As crazy it may sound, but given the fragility of a human body, it's been decided that our brains should be transplanted into different vessels. Autonomous mechanical bodies. Now that's a plot and a half. As soon as the plan was formed, it was put to life, and the first prototype spawned into existence. BioChallenge is an arcade game taking place in the distant future, and you're in control of that first prototype and sent off on a mission to check if it's good enough for the task of saving humanity. And what's better way to test it than to have it combat monstrosities sapping our intergalactic oil reserves. And since in the future, same as now, everything runs on oil, your mission is doubly important. Field testing shiny new exobodies and saving resources for the future to run those bodies on. You can squash bigger enemies by dropping platforms on them and smaller by Zool-like jump spinning. But I suppose you've noticed that already. To progress from one level to another, you need to collect 4 pieces of an amulet which drop from crushed enemies. From time to time you'll also encounter a flying cauldron that holds various bonuses like additional armor and oil capacity for your body, to name a few. At the end of each level you face a boss in the form of a guardian, and this is the only part of the game where you actually get to shoot at anything. Ammo's limited though, so it's worth keeping that in mind. BioChallenge is a game I didn't understand back then, as it's needlessly convoluted in its design, and to be frank, now that I do, I still don't find it too fun to play. But it seems to be liked by those 3 people in Europe and 1 in the US who knew about it, so perhaps it's an issue on my side. What's worth noting though is that the game displays more than your typical on Amiga's 32 colors. Apparently it uses so-called EHB mode for 32 colors and 32 half-bright shades at once. but I've seen mentions online that there's been some kind of other magical technical mambo-jumbo used to display quite a few more actually. Don't quote me on that though. Astaroth, the Angel of Death, is an action platformer. You play as Ozymandias, a man who decided to invade Angel of Death's domain and rid it of her once and for all. She's ruling over her catacomb kingdom, surrounding herself with vile minions that are more than happy to surrender their lives to protect her. Since she can only be defeated by the one that wields 9 magical talismans, Astaroth has gathered them and hid them in her catacombs. Ozymandias has to fight his way through her monster-infested creep realm, find the talismans, obtain their mythical powers, each of offering a different boon, and they are telekinetics, allowing you to move objects from afar, pyrokinetics, allowing to throw fireballs, telepathy, revealing where to go next and what to do, shapeshifting, that lets you change your body shape to overcome some of the environmental obstacles, levitation, enabling your use of up and down portals, transmigration, which is for all intents and purposes a teleportation, cryokinetics, that's used to kill creatures made of fire, night vision, which is self-explanatory, and finally meditation that restores some of your lost mind energy, which in games reality is your HP. And with those powers combined, you are Captain Planet. Oh, wrong video, sorry. With those great powers comes great responsibility. God damn it, wrong video again. With those newfound powers, defeating monstrosities sent by Astaroth is much easier, and you must collect all 9 anyway before facing the Angel of Death herself. She is protected by 3 guardians that need to be disposed of first, a sphinx, a 3-headed hydra, and a demon. Eerie music, while quite unusual, is rather nice, and all sound effects in the game are solid too. Graphically it's a mixed bag, as while sprites are pretty nice and some backgrounds are Geiger-like jaw-dropping works of art, the animation sometimes leaves a bad aftertaste, looking as if it was missing several frames and jerky feeling overall. Still, it's something you'll get used to within the 256 screens the game is composed of, and while Astronaut is starting slow, in fact it's hardly a hectic game at all, but it starts especially slow. When you get through the initial stage though and get few extra powers, you'll learn to like it. Or you won't. Believe it or not, given the presentation and setting, but Bobo, aka Stir Crazy, is actually another one of those multi-event sports games. But with sports replaced with chores, prison cells taking place of an Olympic stadium, and heavily polished cartoon-like presentation. The game can be played by up to 6 players alternating, all trying to overcome the included challenges. But if you play alone, you take a role of a titular Bobo, an inmate sentenced for many years in prison. And as such, you'll have to find the biggest and meanest dude there, then brutally take him down to usher your dominance as soon as possible. Oh no, sorry, wrong video again. I obviously meant that you'll have to fill your days with various tasks not to lose it. And these are: a job in prison canteen, where you serve soup to other angry inmates by keeping their plates full for as long as they're willing to eat. Points there are based on how many soups you manage to serve in given time. Then there's peeling of potatoes, and it's a 3-step process. If you didn't know, pick up a potato, peel and then toss it away. Clearly, score here is based on completely peeled spots. Third event sees you helping other inmates escape prison. Not the best idea for someone who's supposed to stay there for years, as it may extend your sentence, but whatever, you do you. And you do so by moving trampoline around, allowing prisoners who jump out of their cell windows to get past the wall. The more you free, the more you score. In 4th event, you're escaping the prison yourself, running on electrical wires and jumping between them to avoid the current that would shock you. The longer you run for, the more points you'll accumulate. And finally, in the last event, you're recaptured by the police and brought back to your cell. You can't sleep though, as your cellmates are heavy snorers, so to calm them down, you have to sing lullabies to them. And when they're asleep, you must quickly get to bed and rest yourself. Points here are based actually on how long you manage to sleep for. Bobo is an unusual example of a multi-event sports game, but it's really fun and presentation is stellar for the year it came out in. So if you have someone to play games with, this one's a no-brainer. Not the person, the game. Though the person may be too. You choose who you spend your time with. Captain Blood is a game that I've never played back in the day, and just learned of it now. And I gotta say that it seems really impressive. Keep in mind, however, that everything I'll say about it is what I found online, and not something I have any even minuscule experience in. So, you're Bob Morlock, a game designer, and you just developed a new sci-fi video game set in the alien worlds. Soon enough you realize that game worlds are or become real, and somehow you found yourself on a ship within your game. And even worse, a hyperspace accident clones you multiple times. Each of those clones departs their own way, and each has a fraction of your vital fluids sustaining your life. If you're Eastern or North European, that's most likely vodka. If you're South European, it's gotta be wine. Central and West will probably say it's beer. For Japan it's sake, North Americans will swear that it's whiskey, for Africa it will be water, and Middle East will bet on oil. And as for the rest of the world, my stereotypical knowledge ends here, so I don't think I can add any more. Oh, and so that we're clear and I don't accidentally offend someone, I don't really think that. It was a joke, as bad as it was. So let's get over it. Anyway, coming back to those clones of you, you gotta Pokemon them, so catch them all, destroy and regain your life energy. As you start the game, real you, and not Bob Morlock you, there's only 5 of these left to find. Given how vast and alien the universe is, however, the task is neither easy nor one you could complete quickly. Captain Blood is an open-ended first-person adventure game where most of the time will be spent gathering clues of whereabouts of your clones by traveling to distant planets and communicating with alien species. Since each of the aliens use their own language, the game features an interface of over 150 icons, each representing different basic and sometimes abstract concepts, and you have to arrange them in correct order to convey to aliens what you have in mind. It's an unusual and interesting idea, and one that I find rather unique and novel, not only for the time, but for gaming in general. Successful conversations may offer clues on your clone's locations or unlock access to new planets. Your health deteriorates over time, which affects the game's interface, making it more difficult to control. Every time you dispose of a clone, however, all the symptoms go away for a while. Everything about Captain Blood's design is unlike anything else I've seen. From the story, through plot, all the way to the gameplay mechanics and game's inner workings. It's one-of-a-kind title and one I am really keen on trying out at some point. New York Warriors is an 8-way scrolling top-down shoot-em-up in a post-apocalyptic New York setting, heavily influenced by the movie The Warriors from 1979. In a far-off future of 2014, New York is a lawless land, run by various gangs competing for power and control of the city. The Warriors are the last remnants of the law and order, and you as one of the new recruits have to battle your way through dangerous streets of NYC all the way to the World Trade Center to stop a nuclear device on top of the building from exploding. Each area you plow your way through disposing of bodies left and right is controlled by another gang, and they are all entirely different from one another. So, there are Ramboids, Samis, Assassins, Sluggers, Killer Clowns, Ganja and Bombers, each having distinctive looks and weapons that they use. The game is pure fun, even better in simultaneous 2-player mode where you can both cover each other's backs, going through this gritty city overtaken by mayhem. And it's not unusual to have a screen full of bad guys with bullets flying seemingly everywhere and explosions all around. So yeah, that body of yours will be helpful as it gets hectic fast. Fortunately, there's a lot of weapons you'll find on your way, so running around with a rocket launcher or flamethrower spraying death all around will not be anything unusual. Sounds are what you'd expect from a shooter, but graphics are really good. Not unlike those seen in the arcades, with a lot of color and big fluidly animated sprites everywhere. Honestly, I could see it somewhere on the cabinet just sitting and waiting for someone to start dropping coins in. Overall, New York Warriors is a really fun game, perhaps not the best on the Amiga, but quality and content-wise easily on par with many of the arcade releases of the time. Persian Gulf Inferno is a side-scrolling action platformer. The terrorists captured world's largest oil reserve that for some reason seems to be held in a huge office complex building. Unless it's just a front and the tank itself is somewhere in the background. We'll never know. So, they captured it and they threaten to blow it up with an atomic bomb if their demands are not met. Don't you wonder how all those bad guys always seem to get their hands on an atomic bomb somehow? I mean, in most countries getting a bomb or a set of explosives of any kind is a challenge, and yet they somehow always have one or two of these bad boys down their sleeve. Curious. Anyway, the game is taking place in said huge building filled with armed bad guys to the brim, and they do nothing but seemingly just wait for you to show up. The complex is virtually a maze of floors and doors that you have to traverse through, surviving a constant onslaught of enemies, all to disarm the bomb. Thing is, you have to find it first, and the game gives you only a simple handgun, 2 pieces of explosives and 25 minutes to do so. No hints, no friendly tips or an advice, nothing. It is impossible to complete it on first attempt, so you'll have to play it at least few times to gradually learn and memorize the layout of the building, to finally complete the game at some point. Hopefully. While you may start with close to nothing, you'll be able to find better weapons soon, and they'll definitely help on your mission. So don't give up and persevere. Persian Gulf Inferno feels to me like a newer version of Impossible Mission, but with terrorists instead of robots and doors in place of furniture you had to go through in each room like crazy. It is however considerably more demanding and tackles a more serious issue. But what everyone is really wondering, is it a better game? Well, since it's in an Obscure Games video, chances are that it isn't. And sadly I concur. It's not a bad game, it's just unremarkable, and another one of those titles where the time limit will annoy me way too much to ever complete it. One thing I do like it about it though are the fluid animations for all the characters and gory shootouts. RanX is a French game loosely based on an Italian comic book, specifically RanX Xerox in America. A mysterious psychoplague from space has spread over the world and is killing people at a rapid pace. There's no vaccine, but luckily there's a cure. You, as a hardcore blue-lipped android, have to travel from Rome to New York with an antidote pill to save the POTUS. Now, what US president is doing in NYC when he's deadly ill and why the pill has to be carried on foot by an android from Italy is beyond the scope of my understanding. But that's what you gotta do and where you gotta go. And when you finally get there, you'll need to travel straight back to Rome to save your girlfriend, who's portrayed in a game as a dangerously young lassie. Oh my god, I just said lassie. What am I, like 90? Anyway, as you carry on with those aforementioned crazy tasks, you also have to figure out how to disarm the bomb that's been implanted in your head. Because that's what happened at some point too. I know, crazy. RanX is a mature arcade adventure with beat-em-up gameplay and logic abandoned at the design stage. And you're the one to play it. You can pretty much hit and fight with anyone and anything you come across. I mean, you can even keep hitting a car time after time like there's no tomorrow if you'd like to, or kick a sausage dog. And while I don't condone either of the activities and there's no real reason for any of them, you can just do that. That said, you must be careful not to attack peaceful characters as they may be interacted with and some of them are necessary to progress within the game, because they may share a valuable plot-centric info. Even if said communication is simplified to just few icons for questioning, threatening, laughing and insulting the person you're talking to. Sounds are actually pretty good and graphics are nice, even if overly bloody at times. But the jerky animation and flick scrolling are not something I'd expect from an Amiga. Still, while RanX may be riding the crimson-colored wave of brutality, as it's probably the only Amiga title in which you can actually beat someone to a bloody pulp, it's not a great game, and at times feels repeatable. The fact that it's actually really difficult to did not encourage potential players, and it remained largely unknown. Soldier 2000 is a mixed-type shooter in which you play as a female Special Forces agent, saving hostages and killing terrorists. And yeah, it seems that today's video has been entirely overtaken by the terrorist themes. Oh well, what can you do? It is what it is. Anyway, the game is composed out of 5 missions, and before each you're arming your girl agent to the teeth, picking and matching guns and explosives big and small to make her into a small bipedal tank. Keep in mind, however, of the weight limitations and that each weapon requires you also to load ammo. I mean, it does not if you just want to keep it as a souvenir, but during shootouts it's crucial to be prepared. Each mission starts in a side-scrolling to the corridor where enemies may come from left and right and you gotta mutilate them with your weaponry, leaving blobs of red all around. This section of the game is considerably easier, but you're also not going to find many hostages to free in it. And by that, I mean none. So there's doors. Yeah, and going through those sets you off on a second part of the mission, Operation Wolf-like shooting. These are considerably more demanding, enemies come from seemingly everywhere and there's way more of them at once than in a side-scrolling bit. But there's more hostages there too, so the reason you're in this kerfuffle in the first place. The pictorial representation at the bottom of the screen shows your girl and her physical status, so it's worth keeping an eye on it, so she does not die. If she does unfortunately die, you can always send another one to complete the mission. So yeah, you guessed right, they are de facto your lives in the game. All in all, while the presentation of Soldier 2000 is not bad, even if a bit grotesque at times, it's not jaw-dropping either. And the gameplay is meh at best, so unless you're a hardcore fan of shooters, I wouldn't go out of your way to track it down. So, how do you like today's episode? Did at least few of these games were something you never knew of? Any of them look interesting or something you'd like to try out? Make sure to let me know. And come back to watch the next video, which you know may very well drop tomorrow or in a week. My schedule, same as my personality, is a random mess, but if you subscribe, and 70% of you sadly are not, then you'll always get new video in your subs box when it drops. Even better, if you click the bell, YouTube will send you a friendly notification when the next one's out. So think about it. If you feel generous and would like to support my channel, I'd appreciate Patreon and YouTube memberships. They really help a lot and will go towards replacing my aging editing rig. You will always get access to new videos a day early, but if you can't or don't want to do that, likes and subscribes are great too. Most of all, however, I would like to take a second here and thank all the YouTube Let's Plays and playthrough creators, from whose videos short bits were taken for this one as a video background to my commentary. They're all amazing, and thanks to their efforts, retro community can prevail for years longer and in better form than it could have otherwise. So thank you. For me though, this is all, so have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Peace.